This conference will now be recorded.
Audio right now, but we will bear through it. So first up, do we have amendment to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd recommend that we amend the agenda to immediately go into closed session versus going into closed session at the end of the meeting, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Kupka?
Right, yeah, Dr. Young just did that. I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors.
Right, she's making a motion to do so. Yes. No, she's making an amendment to amend the agenda.
Hold on one second. No.
I make a motion to amend the agenda to go into closed session at the beginning of the meeting.
Do I have a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All say aye. Motion carries. We are now in closed session. Good luck, Mr. Dines. All right. Can we have our motion, Ms. Kupka?
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
And Mr. Stonehill, do you certify?
So certified.
Ms. Kupka?
So certify.
Mr. Bush?
So certify.
Mr. Granger?
So certify.
Kathy Bender, so certified. We are back in open meeting. We will now move to the public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Is there anyone that is physically present in the audience who would like to come to the podium and speak at public comment? And thank you everyone for waiting through a little bit of technical difficulties. Is there anybody that would like to talk? All right, Mr. Dines, is there anyone online? Do we have any written correspondence to members of the board? All right, we will close public comment and we will move on to reports from members of the board. Mr. Stonehill.
Madam Chair, everybody, thanks for coming out. Thursday the 17th, attended a joint meeting with the Tourism Committee, speaking about the way forward for the TAC and things that we're going to be doing here in King George, and also filling some vacant appointments on the TAC. Saturday the 19th, myself, Mr. Granger, Ms. Kupka attended the grand opening and the ribbon cutting ceremony of our newest vineyard here in King George County, which is Back Porch Vineyard. Beautiful day, beautiful location. Had a great time was had there. Wednesday the 23rd, I attended a Rappahannock River Basin Commission virtually. We were supposed to be together in person, but somebody came down with a positive test and couldn't make it, so the meeting was then virtual. They talked about the effects of COVID all up and down the Rappahannock River. We also then approved a letter of support for the Lower River Scenic designation that they were working on that Mrs. Kupka brought up in our last meeting. Thursday the 24th, we all met as for a CARES Act meeting and worked on the delving out of the CARES Act money. Monday the 28th, had a visit with Lisa Hull from the Northern Neck Tourism Board about business and tourism here in the county and kind of the way forward and the fall tourism for King George and how we're going to do. I would also like to say congratulations to a couple of members of our sheriff's office. Monday, October 5th, Lieutenant Kevin Brantz of the Sheriff's Office after 28 years, somewhere right in there, retired. And we also had Sergeant Weston. He was promoted to Lieutenant of Patrol. So that's some big changes at the Sheriff's Office. And I look back on my notes, and I did not say a couple things on our last meeting, that we also had a retirement of First Sergeant Davis from the Sheriff's Office after 23 years. He retired and went and was now the Assistant Chief of Police at the Dahlgren and Indian Head bases. And also Deputy Simmons was then promoted to First Sergeant to take First Sergeant Davis's place. So I just wanted to say congratulations to all those guys. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't read the whole report in the interest of time, but I do want to make mention of a few things. Thursday, September 17th, also attended the joint work session with the Tourism Advisory Committee. I want to thank the Tourism Advisory Committee members for their time and insight, and also thank Dr. Young and our Economic Development and Tourism staff for their work. Thursday, September 24th, also attended the CARES Act budget work session. Thank you again to Dr. Young and the department directors for their presentations and work to support their requests for funding. Wednesday, September 30th, participated in Representative Rob Whitman's broadband teletown hall featuring Mr. Evan Feynman, Chief Broadband Advisor in Governor Northam's administration. I won't read everything I have in my notes here, but I would refer you to the recorded online call on Representative Whitman's Facebook page. It has a really good explanation of why the governor's priority is to utilize these public-private partnerships in expanding broadband, and why the public utility model is just really not feasible, given the dollars that we have and all of the obstacles involved. A King George citizen on the call asked when would the VATI grant decision be made, and Mr. Feynman said they hope to have the VATI awards announced in December because it has to be after the current federal funding round, and they have to stand up a challenge program to allow current competitors to prove they are already servicing the certain areas. Saturday, October 3rd, this past Saturday, attended King George Farmers Market. Representative Whitman was there, and he and I spoke at length about broadband and the possibility of another round of CARES Act funding directly to the localities and not filtered through the state first. And I had also, over the summer, requested of his staff a letter of support for our regional VATI broadband grant application that I just spoke of. And on September 18th, he sent one to DHCD, the state agency that doles out the grants. I was also glad to be able to thank him in person for that, and I would note that Senator McDougal and Delegate Ranson also sent letters of support for our VATI grant application, and I appreciate their support as well. And a copy of that grant application can be accessed online on the DHCD website. And one last thing, on Saturday, October 31st, the Rotary Club of King George Dahlgren will conduct their flag planting event beginning at 9 a.m. at Ellie Smoot Memorial Library. They are looking for volunteers to come out and help plant 200 American flags in honor of Flags for Heroes, which will be on display through Veterans Day. You can visit their website for more information about the volunteer opportunity and/or to sponsor a flag for your hero. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kupka. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I also attended these joint work sessions and joint meetings with my colleagues. I do want to thank my colleagues for the way that we're able to have discussions. With so much going on around us right now, there's so much unrest and uncivility. We don't always agree. But I think we are able to conduct ourselves to where we can have civil and respectful discussion. So I'd like to thank my colleagues for that. I'll talk about Saturday. Saturday, I was also at Community Day at the Farmers Market, and I was working with the Republican Committee table. But with that, I took time and I walked over 3 tables down and had a conversation with a friend of mine who was working the Democrat group table. We don't agree politically. I mean, it's pretty clear. I'll wear my opinion on my sleeve. I'm very outspoken, but I respect him. And even though we don't agree politically, we still are able to find common ground. We had a very good conversation about the Dahlgren Heritage Trail, something that I fully support. And that's the commonality that I wish more people would strive to gain. If you sit down and you talk to someone long enough, eventually you're going to find some common ground. With everything going on in this county, between conversations about the schools or a statue or national politics and the presidential election, I would just tell everybody, please take some time, be respectful. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody has a right to voice their opinion, and just be respectful of that. You don't always have to agree, but you do have to be respectful of each other. Madam Chair, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. I'll endeavor to be brief. I know we've already gone fairly long so far. 17th of September, I also joined on the TAC meeting. Appreciate the TAC and all that you do. So thank you to all the members. Thank you to staff as well for preparing the information and the ideas for crafting a way forward on a repeatable process. The 19th, I as well was at the Back Porch Vineyard ribbon cutting. It's a beautiful venue. I encourage anyone and everyone to get out there and check it out. It is really nice, especially I would imagine in the spring and the fall. So hopefully, if you get the opportunity, you can get out there soon. Wednesday, September 23rd. I believe I was the last board member to have the personal meet and greet with Captain Copeland, the commanding officer of Naval Support Activity South Potomac. I feel like we've always had a great relationship with the base, at least since I've been on the board. Captain O'Leary, I feel, worked with us very well and always helped or tried to help to make sure that any impacts of the county were being alleviated as best he can. Captain Copeland gave me the impression that he as well wants to work with the community, and I'm not surprised by that. It seems to be the Navy way, so I appreciate his time and just all that they do in order to help alleviate any impacts that may be happening to our county, as well as all that they do provide for the county in regards to a business and revenue and all the companies that come in because of what the base brings to this area. So it is a great asset for our county as well. On Thursday, September 24th, I also attended the CARES Act funding work session, and so I would like to say thank you to all the staff who came out to present for requests and just taking the time to help us figure out how we're going to spend that money. That's it, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Bush, you forgot 2 appointments.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. I apologize for omitting that. My first appointment would be for a term due to expire on December 31st. I would like to recommend Ms. Renee Parker to serve a full term on the Social Services Board. Ms. Parker has been an integral part in this transition period with our Social Services Department, and she came on and served 2 years as part of a vacated seat. So I would like to nominate Ms. Renee Parker to serve a full term on the Social Services Board effective January 1, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Bush.
Thank you. The next appointment would be for a term to the Economic Development Authority that is set to expire on 12/31/2020. I would like to nominate Mr. Guy Booth to another term on the Economic Development Authority effective 1 January 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Thank you for all those that wish to serve. Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now to my report. I'm attending all these meetings that my fellow colleagues did, plus the Back Porch Vineyard, a very nice venue, very well done. And Mr. Bush kind of took a little bit of my thunder, but I wanted to say I do thank my colleagues for our civility and the way we all work together, whether we disagree or agree, which happens very often. But what I wanted to add is in our whole community, we were supposed to have our 300th anniversary, and it was going to be a time of joy and fun and all these events, and then COVID happened. But with that being said, at the beginning of this pandemic, we all banded together. We've lost our way a little bit, but I think we all could get back and remember that we're all King George County citizens and that we all are neighbors and friends. And no matter what your political opinion, we can all work together. And I hope people realize that. I try to realize that every day, that don't be upset at people. Everybody's going through a challenging time. And I think we should step back and all try to work together. I know I try to, but I would just ask everybody to. And then with that being said, all of us have appointments on the board. If you'd really like to make an impact in your community or would just like to serve your community to make it better or to give what you feel is your expertise, please contact us. All of us have positions that are open that we would like to have people to serve. I know I have one on the Board of Zoning Appeals that's been open since Mr. Brooks, who is the previous supervisor in Shiloh, was open. So I'd love to fill that seat, and all my colleagues. So just reach out to us if you'd like to serve. We have many different boards to appoint to. So just send us an email or call us. And that is the end of my report. Thank you very much. We have a consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up is our county constitutional officers report. Do we have any constitutional officers to report, Dr. Young?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Britton, report from the county attorney.
Just one thing, Madam Chair. I brought this up at the Service Authority meeting. Aqua, which is a water and sewer provider in Presidential Lake Section 14, has proposed a rate increase in front of the State Corporation Commission. It's up for hearing on April the 20th of next year, and that will be posted, as I understand it, on the county website if anybody would like to make comments. It is approximately a $1.7 million rate increase overall. It's a little bit difficult to decipher, but if you scroll down to the end, you can see, depending on what class of water you get, water and sewer, what your new rate would be. They say that it'll still be less than 1 penny per gallon. And the three justifications are long-term debt, short-term debt, and about $153,000 in COVID response that Aqua has sustained. They only provide, according to Mr. Weekly, who would know, Presidential Lake Section 14, and he has no comments from his office.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. Does any of my colleagues like to make comment or just? No? No comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Britton, for your report. We'll move on now to our first of our 3 public hearings. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding case number 2008Z03, zoning ordinance text amendment to Article 1.7.1.a and Article 5.3.5 of the King George County zoning ordinance, payment of delinquent taxes. I will first ask for the staff report, and then I will open the floor for public discussion. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight depending on information received during public comment. Please, staff, come up to the podium and give their...
I think, Madam Chair, if it's okay, I can take this one, and if you have any questions of Heather or Lewis, if they're there, this is pretty straightforward, and I told Heather that I could handle it. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Yep, that's fine. Go right ahead, Mr. Britton.
state law allows for an applicant for various community development applications, special exception permits, rezoning, what have you, regarding specific parcels of land, that you're not in arrears with respect to that parcel of land on your taxes and other fees that you owe the county. In other words, if you have delinquent accounts related to Lot X and you want community development to do something for you on Lot X, you have to pay those delinquent accounts. And we went through staff and the planning commission and are suggesting that the board consider whether to add one paragraph, 1.7.1A alpha, to the zoning ordinance, which reads, it's about 3 sentences, directly from the state code. Prior to the initiation of any application by the owner of a subject property, the owner's agent, or any entity which the owner holds an ownership interest greater than 50% for special exception, special use permit, variance, rezoning, or other land disturbing permit, including building permits and erosion and sediment control permits, or prior to the issuance of final approval, the authorizing body may require the applicant to produce satisfactory evidence that any delinquent real estate taxes, nuisance charges, stormwater management utility fees, and other charges that constitute a lien on the subject property that are owed to the locality and have been properly assessed against the subject property have been paid, unless otherwise authorized by the treasurer. Upon receipt of an application, together with supplementary materials and payment of the application fee and provision of proof that all outstanding payments set forth in this section have been paid and satisfied, the zoning administrator may waive this requirement for reasons of health, safety, or public welfare, provided that the applicant or owner has entered into a plan with the county treasurer to pay all delinquent taxes, fees, and charges as set forth in the ordinance. That's the proposed amendment. And I would, again, note, it only goes to the subject property. So if you own 10 properties and you're in arrears on all 10, you would still get your application processed if you paid off your delinquent accounts related to the lot in question. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. Before we go to the public comment, I'll ask if my colleagues have any questions concerning it first. We have no questions. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come and speak on this matter? Mr. Dines, is there anyone online? Do we have any written correspondence to members of the board? All right, we will close this public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve case number 20-08-Z03, zoning ordinance text amendment to Article 1.7.1.A and Article 5.3.5 of the King George County zoning ordinance, payment of delinquent taxes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Britton, for your work on that one. Public hearing number 2. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding case number 20-08-Z02, amendment, renaming, and recodification of Chapter 16 Wetland Zoning Ordinance of the King George County Code to comply with the Code of Virginia and to move the Wetland Zoning Ordinance to the Zoning Ordinance. Amendment to add Article 15 to the Zoning Ordinance. I will first ask for the staff report. I will then open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight depending on information received during public comment. Let's go right ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I am Louis Pancotti, planner, and I will be presenting case number 20-08-Z02. Next slide, please. Currently, the wetland zoning ordinance is located in Chapter 16 of the County Code. This ordinance regulates the use and development of the wetlands. It also outlines the process for developing in the wetlands. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 776 passed during the 2020 legislative session and amended Section 28.2-104.1, 28.2-1301, 28.2-1302, and 28.2-1308 of the Code of Virginia relating to wetlands protection and living shorelines. The provisions of this bill became effective July 1st, 2020. This amendment reflects those changes and moves the wetland zoning ordinance to the zoning ordinance from the county code. It'll now be Article 15 of the zoning ordinance. Next slide, please. At the September 8, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, the commission voted unanimously to forward case number 20-08-Z02 to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval. Therefore, the Department of Community Development staff and the Planning Commission recommends that the board approve case number 20-08-Z02, amendment renaming recodification of Chapter 16 Wetland Zoning Ordinance of the King George County Code to comply with the Code of Virginia and to move the Wetland Zoning Ordinance to the zoning ordinance, amendment to add Article 15 to the zoning ordinance. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have any questions, my colleagues, before we move on to public comment? Mr. Stonehill?
Just one thing. I read through most of it. Took a page out of Mrs. Kupka's book, but under 15.4 authorized activities, since we are changing and making things, DGIF is now DWR. So maybe just make a note of that since you're changing things and updating things.
And that is where?
Number 6 under 15.4. They just changed the name of that agency, that's all.
Okay.
Do we have any other comments, questions before we move on to public comment? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this matter? Mr. Dines, do we have anybody online? Do we have any written correspondence to colleagues? All right, I will close this part of the public hearing. And do we have a motion?
I move to accept case number 20-08-Z02 as presented.
Madam
Any-
Chair, if I can say, I think Mr. Stonehill makes a good point with the amendment to strike Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and insert Department of Wildlife Resources.
So we have to amend that amendment, correct?
I think so. I think it would be a friendly amendment if Mr. Stonehill would be wishing to do that because it's a text amendment. So it would have to be in your motion.
So we have to amend your motion.
Okay, I'm making an amendment to approve with the change that I stated.
Do we have?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you to our Community Development Department, Mr. Britton, for that. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, also on those two public hearings, since they're text amendments, could you direct staff to send those to MuniCode to update the county code?
Yes.
Thank
We
you.
could have our staff please send those to MuniCode. That's what you were looking for, right, Mr. Britton? I couldn't totally hear you.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, if because they're text amendments and code amendments, if we could be directed to send those to MuniCode to update the county code.
Does that have to be a motion? No, that's all right. I'm just clarifying.
No, you can do that.
All right, well, I direct our staff and you, Mr. Britton, to please send that to MuniCode with the proper text. All right, next up is our third and final public hearing. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding amendment and appropriation of the FY 2020-2021 budget pursuant to VA Code Section 15.2-2507 to include CARES Act funding. I will first ask for the staff report. I will then open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. In order to afford an opportunity to speak, please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight, depending on information received during public comment. All right, Dr. Young?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is going to be fielded by Finance, and Wilma, if you're available, you can present, or I'll present if you have any technical issues.
This is Wilma. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
So do you want to have the public hearing first, Dr. Young, before the action item?
The action item is a part of the public hearing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So the subject is the CARES Act public hearing. Summary of information: King George County was notified that the Virginia Department of Treasury will be providing a second allotment or allocation of federal CARES Act funding for our community in the amount of an additional $2,341,338. A fund titled the CARES Fund was established to track expenses related to COVID-19. There's a resolution attached. The first line of the resolution is to appropriate designated CARES Act funds for FY 2021 within the CARES Act account. And our recommendation would be that the Board of Supervisors approve the resolution as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Do we have any questions for Ms. Ward before I open up for public comment?
Yes,
All right.
let me say something, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Young.
There's a mistake in the board report, and that's on my part. The recommendation is to not only approve the resolution as presented, but also to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget to reflect the additional $2,341,338,000 that's been received as a part of the CARES Act. So we need to amend the budget and then approve the resolution as presented.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Young. Do we have any people in the audience or any residents who would like to speak on this matter? Do we have anybody online, Mr. Dines? Thank you. Do we have any written correspondence? All right. So we need two motions. One is to amend the budget and the other is to approve this funding. Anybody like to make a motion?
I move to approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
I move to amend the county budget to reflect the $2,341,338 of CARES Act fund.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Dr. Young. Ms. Ward. We are now on to presentations and reports. NSWC update presentation by Captain Plu, Commander of NSWCDD. Got it right. Captain Plu.
I am not on, but I speak loud. So now it's going to be louder. Thank you again for this opportunity. I do want to say Captain Copeland has been a good friend. He is my neighbor on the base there. And as far as hosts go, he is just in line as Captain O'Leary. He is a good friend of the Warfare Center. I know he's a good friend of the base, and it's been a pleasure in his few months to be working with him. I am excited to be here representing the men and women of the Warfare Center. We understand the importance of being an integrative, active member of the community. And as citizens first, the importance of maintaining a relationship within our county. We firmly believe that a continued opening communication between Dahlgren and the community benefits both the county, the Navy, and our nation. To that end, the Warfare Center is a robust research, development, test, and evaluation center. Our mission is to deliver surface ship warfare systems to protect our nation and defeat our adversaries. We support the warfighter, warfighting, and deliver combat power to our future surface Navy force. We are the premier Navy Research and Development Center. That boom that you hear down the river, that is us. Our test range is active. And we maintain the intellectual strength of our surface fleet and their weapon systems. And as such, and as the largest RDT&E employer in the state, we know that we must continue this mission, and we are growing. Our annual budget execution was $1.7 billion, about $800 million of that in contracts. The other half of that is in payroll and in the facility upkeep. We are a working capital fund. That means we operate as a revolving fund, and as such, we must replenish each year what we spend. Of our 4,786 government employees, 1,327 of them reside in King George County. We have hired above attrition this year, approximately 580 folks. 81% of that workforce, or about 3,884, are part of a technical workforce. They have STEM degrees. But we know we must collaborate with industry to support our Navy's mission. To that end, with the local businesses, we've hosted 2 virtual industry days. This event was open to all local businesses. In contracting obligations in King George County, we contracted to small businesses $372 million. And we've added 4 new small business entrants into our business line at Dahlgren in this fiscal year. We've also newly created was a Capital Region Tech Bridge, which partners with Indian Head up at the division up at Carter Rock and the Marine Corps Warfighting Laboratory to strengthen our ecosystem and to bring innovation outside of the Navy and ideas to the warfighter. Our local community is key to our teaming and our future in Dahlgren. To that on the STEM, we've hosted King George educators for an introductory virtual computer coding course to enable the educators to incorporate computer programming into their classes and their curriculum. We've hosted the King George educators in our virtual robotic teachers workshop. It taught the fundamentals of teaching with the Ozobots and the Lego EV3 robots and platforms. I don't know what any of that means, but I do know I got to get videotaped playing with robots for an hour. It was fun. We continue to support the Advanced Computer Science and Education Region 3 efforts, which is helping local school systems in their effort to develop a new computer science curriculum. We are planning virtual high school challenge workshops during this fall semester that will teach engineering, design, programming, communications, and teamwork skills. Those that participate in this fall, those students will be able to act as junior mentors during an expanded summer program in 2021. Our regular in-classroom engagements will be conducted virtually over the current semester, and we stand ready to support King George classrooms as educators define requirements for the virtual engagements of our scientists and engineers. And we are still preparing our Siege Perch programs, our Sea Glider, our FIRST Robotics, and our STEM outreach programs, both virtually and hybrid formats for this year. Now on to the COVID impacts. We have remained open for business. We are max telework since late March. That means mission essential only personnel at the command. Our goal is to achieve our mission while avoiding additional COVID case impacts. Therefore, we are following a phased approach to increasing on-site personnel. We must remain fully operational. It is our mission, with employees on-site as needed, and the command capable of accomplishing all tasking with the new health protocols and protection measures in place. Today, our on-site priority is those without telework capability or personnel who require access to classified documents, spaces, and systems. Employees that self-identify as high risk for complications due to COVID-19 illness will be given priority to continue telework, as well as employees impacted by the closure of schools and child care centers. Currently, we are in phase 1. On-site manpower increases will be mission-based rather than managed at a specific percentage. The duration of phase 1 is not determined at this time. I can tell you we are at about 40%. We were down at a low of about 8% on base at the Warfare Center, not on base, at the Warfare Center. And we're at about 40% now. We'll remain there until phase 2. But phase 2 really will be a mission-based as well. Specific percentages will not be a number that we're going after, but we will steadily increase the number of people returning to work based on the mission need and external factors like the availability and reopening of the child care centers and the schools. Phase 3 will be the fully resuming capacity and interactions on site as telework as required by the mission. And what that means is we do know that on base, or at the Warfare Center rather, that we have jobs such as contracting and in finance that don't necessarily have to be at the center. And we find that to be a good thing. We absolutely do. We think telework is a great option for our community in the future. We have been in Dahlgren for 102 years. You all know that. We've been delivering combat power for the surface fleet. We brought the Norden bomb site to World War II, as well as the fusing of the atom bombs. We brought the algorithm for Miss West for the global positioning system in the Cold War. This year, we delivered lasers to ships on the surface Navy, and we delivered maneuvering bullets, the hypervelocity projectile that has intercepted cruise missiles at test ranges in New Mexico. Financially, we're set, and technically, we're in a good position for the future for another 102 years. That said, we do know it is through our relationships with our community that makes this all possible. Thank you for this time, and we look forward to hosting you guys again at the Warfare Center when we get back to business as normal. I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Stonehill?
Just going to say thank you for coming out.
Thank you, sir.
I don't have any questions. I'd just like to say thank you for your involvement in the community. I know that the base does have an involvement with the community, with the schools. So it's always exciting to hear that that's continuing. I know it's challenging probably this year, but thank you for still being involved in all you do for our community.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate the relationship we have with you, and I just wondered if your PIO might be able to make your remarks public, whether you all do that on your Facebook page, that we can share it for you, if that's possible. I don't know, because I would love to be able to share
Yes, ma'am.
with the community.
As a public hearing, ma'am, I believe you own if I mentioned it here, if I said it, you own it.
Thank you. And it's Andrew, right? Is it Andrew? Alan. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Captain, thank you for coming out tonight and giving that to us. While I understand you guys are doing great work and taking great strides during this time with telework, maximizing that, eventually I do look forward to you guys getting back to full strength. I say that because right now we're enjoying the wonderful traffic situation that we have at 206 and at Owens. But with that enjoyment of less traffic, our restaurants and our gas stations are losing revenues. So whenever you can, I ask that people get out, support local restaurants, get gas in King George if you're traveling through to go back home. But I do look forward to y'all opening up, and thank you for everything that you do.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. And I know Ms. Kupka and I were the only two that got to go on the base tour before everything happened. And we missed some parts of it. So it would be great to get to see the parts we missed. And I really appreciate the base and everything you do. And I really appreciate you coming out tonight to talk to us in person.
Thank you, ma'am. We're glad to be a part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, we now have courthouse financing presentation by Kyle Lau of Davenport and Associates.
Yes, ma'am. Well, Madam Chair and members of the board, it's nice to see everybody this evening. We have a presentation that I think will probably be up on the screen. We've got hard copies as well, if the board would like those. You got it? Okay. All right. Never mind then. So with that, I might just give it a second here while that presentation comes up on the screen. But while we wait for that, you may recall in August, we talked at some length about various strategies for financing the courthouse, knowing that is a major new investment the county is moving forward with here in the near term. And you also likely recall as a board, the recommendation, the green light for us, as we'll call it, the finance working group, meaning Dr. Young, Ms. Ward, ourselves, and your legal representatives, was to get the financing put together in as quickly a process as we reasonably could, knowing that interest rates were at the time and they continue to be very, very favorable. So what we have for you tonight is an update on that plan and really an ability for you as a board to go ahead and take your final action if you're so inclined this evening, that would allow us to continue moving forward with that financing, again, for the courthouse. So with that said, in terms of the presentation, we've got the overview here. But as you recall from last meeting, the planning estimate for the courthouse project itself is $22 million. So the core of what we're talking about is financing this generational type of capital project, meaning it's going to last us, may not last us the 100 years that the last courthouse lasted us, but certainly it will last for many, many decades into the future. And so that $22 million for that investment is the core of what we're talking about here. In addition to that, a little bit of new news for the board. Since that last discussion, we've evaluated the county's existing debt profile, as we do on a relatively routine basis with the county administrator and staff. And we've got a loan, in the second bullet point here, a 2014 VRA loan, existing county debt, that we think in the current marketplace we could refinance for some nice interest rate savings. So the overall concept and plan here would be to combine these two portions of the financing, the core of it really being the new monies, we call it financing for the courthouse, but also add to that and append to that a refinancing of other existing county debt that produces savings for us. And so we'll talk about what that means and the dollars associated with it. This would all get accomplished via what's called lease revenue bonds. Those are fairly commonplace in Virginia, and the county's used those many times in the past. And so you'll see that terminology throughout some of the documentation. Fourth bullet point here, the county maintains excellent credit ratings. That's something that we have talked with you, and certainly you as a board, are due a favorable review on. And that's really allowing us the ability to go forward quickly with this financing and enter the marketplace as quick as we reasonably can. We're in the process of updating those credit ratings. We've had discussions with all three major credit rating agencies. We don't have the results back yet, but in our opinion, those discussions went very well, given the fact that you had such a nice fiscal year last year, meaning FY 2020, all things considered. They appreciated the fact that you've got a structurally balanced budget for this current fiscal year, meaning fiscal year 21. And I think importantly, what they really saw, at least in our opinion, we'll hear the official word back, is the vision that you as a board with Dr. Young and others have for the future of King George. So got our fingers crossed. We feel good about those discussions we've had. And by the time we come to your next meeting, we'll have those results for you. So with that said, I'll go to page 2. In terms of the interest rates, we talked about this a fair amount at our last meeting, and certainly you probably see that in the news as you watch it, but interest rates continue to be basically at or near all-time lows. We've got a graphic here on page number 2 that shows tax-exempt interest rates. Since really 2000, over the last couple of years, we saw some volatility in that market over the sort of intermediate term of the year, meaning in March, April timeframe, but through the summer into what is now somehow the fall. The year kind of flew by that way. Interest rates remain at very, very low levels. And so we're moving as quickly as is reasonably possible to try and capture those interest rates, hopefully while they hang around for us. Page number 3 of the presentation gives you a similar chart, but this is taxable interest rates. So an important concept here, this is all dictated by tax law. It's not a choice we have. The new money that we'll be doing for the courthouse will be done on a tax-exempt basis. The refinancing of those 2014 bonds will be on a taxable basis. So it's technically two slightly different markets, but in both cases, the interest rates are very favorable. and also something that is basically dictated to us by tax law, so we don't really have a choice in terms of how we do that, meaning the new money is tax exempt, the refinancing is taxable. So on page number 4, how is it we go about all of this? Mentioned at the outset these lease revenue bonds, which are basically a loan. I think it's easier to think about that. These terms, bonds, loans, et cetera, get thrown around. I think what we're really doing is going and procuring a loan that will finance the courthouse, as well as refinance the old 2014 bonds, and do that all in one package. And that'll be secured by, from a lender's perspective, from the investors, that'll be secured by a couple different things. First and foremost, it's secured by the moral obligation pledge of the Board of Supervisors, which is basically, in our simple way of saying it, it's the promise to pay that you as a board will make into the future, basically to pay that loan back. And again, that's a pretty typical credit structure in Virginia. And furthermore, is secured by a lien on, say, a mortgage maybe, on the courthouse facility itself. So in the highly unlikely event that a future board decides not to pay on the loan, the lenders would have the ability to kind of move in on the courthouse per se. To our knowledge, that's never happened in Virginia. Certainly wouldn't expect it here, but it does give the rating agencies and the investor community some comfort that we're putting up an essential asset as collateral for the loan. We will need the EDA, meaning the county's EDA, to make a similar approval like you will tonight. That's just by virtue of how the law is basically structured in Virginia. We do these lease revenue bonds. It requires that the EDA serve as a conduit and only a conduit. It's really the Board of Supervisors and the county's loan. I should mention that Jesse Bausch with Sands Anderson, your bond counsel, is over my right shoulder. He can probably get into some of the intricacies there. But we're scheduled to have you approve this evening, and then the EDA will take this up on Thursday evening, again, serving as simply a conduit for you as a Board of Supervisors. So on page number 5, we'll take our two purposes here and just break them down a little more detail. And this really mirrors what is in the resolutions that have been prepared by bond counsel, and you'll be able to approve after this presentation. So we basically have our $22 million for the courthouse. Again, all new money for the new courthouse. We think about that as a generational project, last for many, many decades. So we're going to finance that over a 25-year time period. So you think about your current courthouse, it's lasted you basically 100 years. We don't necessarily expect a new courthouse will last another 100 years, but it certainly is going to last many multiple decades. So the thought here is to go ahead and finance over a 25-year time period, take advantage of rates while they are so favorable, and structure it such that we repay the loan over what we call the useful life of that project. What you'll see in your resolution is the resolution will authorize an amount up to $23 million. The reason we do that is to provide a little bit of contingency. We go sell the bonds in the marketplace over the next couple of weeks. We're going to do that, we think, via competitive sale, which basically means we're going to let the marketplace give the best combination of coupons and yields on our bond sale to produce the lowest possible interest rate. And so in order to do that, we build a little bit of flexibility into the amount that is borrowed to allow the bidding community, whether it's banks, brokerage firms, et cetera, to give us the loan structure that meets our $22 million for the project and meets our desired repayment term, but does so at the lowest possible interest rate. We have a not to exceed final maturity in the resolution of 30 years. We don't expect to use all that. We think we're going to use just 25 years, but we provide a little bit of flexibility within that. And then there's a not to exceed true interest cost, which I think is just an easier way to say, it's a more complex way to say the interest rate in the loan would not exceed 4%. That's significantly above where we are right now. If we continue moving forward and markets hang in about where they are, hopefully they do, we don't control that, we would expect that interest rate to be somewhere in the probably mid to low 2% range. But again, knowing we've got a lot of events in the world, we build in some flexibility there to allow us to lock something in, again, up to 4%. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to interrupt you, Kyle, but on this topic that you're talking about right now, and maybe I got ahead of you, but in the timeline, it says week of Monday, October 25th, the county sells bonds in the public credit markets. Interest rates are locked in. That date is significant because obviously interest rates are very low right now. But the following one says week of Monday, November 9th, close on the bonds. There's a major election that's happening in that time frame, which absolutely can affect the markets. And interest rates could spike. They could stay the same depending on the outcome of the election. Is there a way to where this timeline could be moved up to take place where we close on the bonds prior to the election, or in the previous sentence where you talked about the week of October 25th, are the interest rates locked in at that point? And regardless of the outcome of the election, those interest rates are locked in?
Yeah, so I'll give you two answers here. Number one is we may be able to move that schedule up a little bit. That's part of what we've asked the rating agencies. We've just had those discussions. Is if they can get us their ratings back early next week, we would likely move the sale of the bonds up a week to even get it a week earlier than what we'll show in the schedule here in the next couple pages. And so that's I think answer number one. Answer number two is that the interest rates are locked in on the day the bonds are sold. And so the process between the rates being locked in when the bonds are sold and closing is largely a paperwork process. But if we're able to move things up in terms of the sale, we may also be able to close prior to the election as well. Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions before we move on? All right, please continue.
Yes, ma'am. On page number 6, so the second portion of our loan is this refinancing portion we've mentioned. So again, to the point that interest rates are very low right now, we've looked at the county's debt profile and said, all right, are there some areas whereby we can take an existing loan at the same time we're going through this whole process, take it from a higher rate to a lower rate? There's some more moving pieces involved in that, but that's basically what we're attempting to do here. And so we've identified 2014 VRA bonds. These bonds actually date all the way back to about 2008, when some of the initial financing for the government center was done via a loan back in 2008. It was then refinanced with VRA in 2014, and we think can be again refinanced for savings. Here we are in 2020. So about 12.7 million, I'm going to round this up a little bit, call about 13 million of that loan we think would be refinanced with this bond issue. There's about 17 million outstanding on it right now. The reason we wouldn't finance all 17 million is that difference, meaning between the 14 and the 17, about $3 or $4 million doesn't produce any savings for us. So the thought process is leave that alone, let that basically wind its way down over the next couple of years, but refinance the larger portion of that loan, and in the process, lower the interest rate on the loan. In a current market scenario, and again, we've talked about how low rates are, we think that would result in yield about $800,000 of debt service savings by virtue of refinancing that existing 2014 loan down to current market interest rates. In the process of that, we'd not be extending the final maturity, so we're not pushing anything out, keep the same final maturity, bring the rate down, and thus save money in the process. And there's one other wrinkle here, which is a positive for the county, in that 2014 loan, basically the collateral for that loan is, in summary, the entire government center property, except the piece where we're going to put the courthouse. So VRA, who was the lender on that 2014 loan, basically has a mortgage on the sheriff's office, the animal control facility, and some of the land up around there at that site. And what we'll be using as collateral for our new bonds is just the portion of the land there that the courthouse will actually go on. So an added benefit outside of just simply interest rates of refinancing the 14 bonds with this loan is we're going to be able to take that portion that we refinance, take it away from a collateral standpoint, the larger portion of the government center site, use just the small, relatively small portion of the land that's going to secure the courthouse to secure that larger portion. And thus it's basically going to free up the sheriff's office, animal control facility, and some of that land about 10 years earlier than it otherwise would. So what you'll see in your resolution is an ability to go forward with that refinancing, basically so long as it doesn't cost us any money. The theory there being the existing loan on that sort of balance of the government center site, if we indeed pay off and refinance the larger portion here, will wind down, I'll use that term, over the next 3 or 4 years. So basically by the fall of 2024, the sheriff's office, animal control facility, and the balance of that land would be free and clear, no liens on it. And the remaining portion of that loan would be secured just by the courthouse facility that really isn't going anywhere for a long time. And so there's an added benefit to doing all of this that'll provide some flexibility, not next year or the year after, but basically over the next 4 years in terms of mortgages per se that the county has on different facilities. And so those really are two pieces, if you will, of the loan. On page number 7, we've just summarized those. And so again, probably repeating myself a little bit here, but 2 purposes: new money for the courthouse up to $23 million. And number 2, refinance the existing 2014 bonds. We've authorized here up to $16 million. We don't expect we're really going to need that much. But we've given ourselves a little bit of flexibility there to kind of pick and choose the portions of the loan that do indeed produce savings for us. So in essence, a total loan size of not to exceed $39 million, but really of that only $22 to $23 million is quote unquote new money, meaning for the new project. On page number 8, and again, we've kind of alluded to this by virtue of Mr. Bush's question already, but we're really very much well into the process. So with your approval, it's the last approval we would need of the board, meaning Board of Supervisors. We'll be at the EDA Thursday night and would ask them to make a similar approval. Those really are the 2 key legal sort of approvals that we need. We'll expect ratings back from the rating agencies next week, which would allow us to be in the market the week after that, which should be a week faster than we're even showing on page 8 here in terms of the schedule. So again, all subject to markets sort of cooperating over the next couple weeks. There's a lot of uncertainty, but the goal here is to try and move this as fast as prudently and reasonably possible to capture these rates while they're here. So with that, Madam Chair, I will stop talking there for a second, answer any questions that you have.
Does any of my colleagues have any questions? I really appreciate this. I mean, we're trying to do due diligence with the county's funds and refinancing some of our debt to a lower interest rate and freeing up some of our buildings as collateral, I think is a win-win. We do need the courthouse, and it's just an opportune time to be able to take advantage of interest rates, and I feel that that's really important. And so we have to pass a resolution do I have a motion?
I move to adopt the documents authorizing the courthouse financing, refinancing, and request the EDA to take formal action at their next meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much for your work. Next up, Dr. Young, 300th anniversary event presentation and funding request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll wait for the presentation. Thank you, Chris. As the board will recall, you all directed for the 300th anniversary planning committee to return to installing and hosting 300th anniversary events. The 300th anniversary committee got to work, and we had developed the first of 2 events for the remainder of the 300th anniversary year. This event is the King George Gala, also known as the theme, The Evening Under the Stars. Next slide. So this event will take place, as you see in the lower quadrant of the slide, on October 17th, 2020. The doors will open at 6 p.m. and we intend for the event to last from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. The location for the event, as stated in the upper quadrant of this slide, it will take place at Back Porch Vineyard. The concept for the event, it'll be a formal, basically a black tie / business attire affair that will be associated with entertainment, music, and dinner. In keeping with concerns about CDC guidelines and the VDH guidelines, the venue will afford us an opportunity to host the event both inside and outside, in keeping with the governor's orders for crowd limitations. I captured in the bottom quadrant of the slide the budget for the event, which includes catering, music, porta-johns, table and chairs, stage, and the venue itself, coming to a total of $32,960. However, as the board is fully aware, there were many events that the board had approved funding for that we were not able to continue. So we have unencumbered fund balance of $21,930. So what left remaining is the need for $11,030 to fund the event. Next slide. So my recommendation to the board is to authorize the county administrator to appropriate $11,038 of tourism fund monies to pay for the 300th anniversary event known as the Gala or the Evening Under the Stars. This recommendation is based after consultations with members of the Tourism Advisory Committee in keeping with state code prior to allocating expenditure out of the tourism fund.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Young? Yep, go ahead, Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dines, can you go back to the prior slide? Because I didn't see it in our packet, so I went back into the online meeting to find the slides. So that's $11,030 is what you're requesting tonight, Dr. Young. I just want to make sure I have that figure right.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm sorry, I should have just remained on the slide instead of the recommendation slide. Yes, we're requesting $11,030, and that will meet the budget for the gala.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Do we have any other questions? This requires a motion, correct, Dr. Young?
That's correct, Madam Chair. I'd like to recommend that the board approve that $11,030 be appropriated from the tourism fund to fund the 300th anniversary event known as the King George County Gala.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Kupka seconded there. Got ahead of Mr. Bush. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up is King George Middle School change order request by Mr. Adam Vogel, RRMM Architects. Dr. Young, are you?
Yes, ma'am. And before we begin, Adam will not be utilizing the presentation. He'll be referencing both summary documents that's contained in the board packet and a detailed packet that was emailed to the board prior to the meeting. If any citizen wants to review the detailed summaries of the packet, the copies will be made available in the county administration office.
All right. Do we have any questions? As you know, I don't particularly care for change orders. Do we have any specific questions by some of these? Go ahead, Ms. Kupka.
So this isn't a specific question related to what's in our packet and what we've been provided, but I walked around over the weekend, walked around the middle school campus, and overall, I think it looks great. A few months ago, actually before the schools closed, many months ago at this point, 6 months ago now, I did tour the inside of the middle school, and it's amazing, the transformation. There were a couple points in time where I wasn't even sure where I was in relation to the old building versus the new building. But so I do want to commend you on this, but I do have a question specifically about outside. I noticed when I was checking out the softball dugouts and the baseball field and such, there are just big heaps of earth, just heaps of grass. There are at least 6 of them, and they have the orange silt fencing around them. I realized, I think I saw in the memo that you're ahead of schedule and you think you'll finish around November 7th, I think it said, somewhere around there. Is there a plan to get rid of those heaps? I mean, is that part of the job? Because I don't think I really saw it in here, and I just want to make sure that gets cleaned up if that's a direct result of the work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm not sure which specific heaps you're talking about. They might very well be part of the job. I know they were doing some work out there to reconnect the baseball field lights to the power supply. So that might have been what you saw out there. But yes, definitely the site around the baseball field, anything that's within the silt fence, the limits of disturbance is to be completed before construction is done. Yes.
Very good, thank you. And I took pictures. I can send them to Dr. Young and he can send them on. Thank you.
That'd be great.
I had a quick question, and also to clarify to the public. The entrance that's closest to the homes, that one is being permanently closed, correct, and making grass? What used to be an entrance?
Closest to which homes is that? Is that at Dahlgren?
To the fence line of homes where the metal fence is by the tennis courts, you know, where the houses were in, that there was a road there and it's been dug up and it looks like grass has been planted. Is that, I just want to confirm that that's eliminating that road, correct?
Everything that's going to be demoed as far as the road construction has been done at this point.
Right, so I'm just clarifying, it's where the teacher's parking lot was. There was the little access road on the other side that was near the fence line. That is now no longer an access road, correct? And it is
correct.
And it's going to become grass. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Bush? Mr. Granger? Mr. Stonehill? Last call. Mr. Bush, you go ahead.
Okay. So follow the money, right?
Sure.
So I'm looking at this and it says that with the acceptance of the change order, the county can anticipate the return of funds from the following areas, total approximately $119,000. Now, is this after we would approve the change order, which it says would be going towards the allowance that was built into this, which is separate from the contingency fund? So it looks like we would exhaust the contingency fund and then dip into this allowance, but then the county would be receiving $119,000 back that we obviously could apply to the bond. But is that, am I seeing this correctly? That's the question.
Close, yes. You're correct in that we would anticipate the county receiving back about $119,000 to apply towards the bond at the end of the project. There's a slight difference versus the allowance, whether those funds are used for the contingency amounts. This change will add it to the county to the contingency amount for the amount of $49,739.66. And that's on top of the remaining contingency amount of $46,077.17. There remains the allowance amounts, which are built in upfront to the budget of the project at the start, that were not necessary for this project. One of those, the largest one, was $100,000 for moisture mitigation prior to floor installation on the interior of the school. After the moisture testing was done,
we found that we did not need moisture mitigation in the building. And so those funds remain in the project. So this request is to return money to the contingency and to reallocate money from the allowance amounts that were not spent towards other items.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. And my last question would be, under the change categories, it says school, maintenance, and other requested changes. Estimated that line item came in at $45,000. Were these requested changes, one, necessary, and two, vetted by the county engineer and the county administrator?
Yes, they are. They increase the functionality of the building for the school use. It's not specifically a deficiency of the project, but it increases their ability to use the building. And they were all reviewed by the county engineer and has been submitted to Dr. Young as well.
Mr. Granger? All right. With no further question, I thank you very much for answering the questions and being available online.
Yes.
Do we have?
Madam Chair, and I would make a recommendation that the board approve all of the closeout change orders as presented.
I move to approve all change requests as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Next up, Department of Community Development, appointment of acting building official. Ms. Hall.
Good evening. King George County's current building official, Brad Hudson, will retire on October 31st, 2020, and has notified Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, of his intent to vacate his appointment. 105.1 of Virginia Construction Code requires local governments to maintain an appointed building official. Karen has taken all prerequisites of the building official certification and has overseen the daily operations of the building department in Mr. Hudson's absence. With his 16 years of experience within the department, Mr. Heron's appointment will ensure a smooth transition upon Mr. Hudson's retirement. While serving as the acting building official, the Community Development Department will advertise the position to recruit a permanent official. At this time, we request that the Board of Supervisors appoint Karen as acting building official as the King George County.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Thank you and congratulations for your acting appointment. Thank you. All right. Department of Parks and Recreation, Roslyn Road Museum proposal. Mr. Clark.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Tonight I return with a request to approve use of the Roseland Road property. Give Mr. Dines 1 second. A brief history, just to catch the public up in case they have not been present at previous meetings. The land tonight on Roseland Road that we discussed was acquired as in the exchange between VDOT, the Maryland Transportation Authority, Virginia Tourism Commission, and King George County for the Harry Nice Thomas Mack Middleton Bridge project. The land is limited in use by the Federal Lands to Parks program. On September 9th of this year, both the museum and event center plans previously discussed before this board were presented again at a joint meeting and / town hall with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and the Board of Supervisors. Public comments received at and following that town hall support the use of the property as a museum or other limited impact use. A museum would be a joint venture between the Ralph Munch Alumni Association, the King George County Historical Society, the Dahlgren Heritage Foundation, and King George County. The 3 volunteer groups have offered to staff the facility during limited operational hours. Current proposed hours are Wednesday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Initial plans also include having a conference room on the 2nd floor, county office space in a bedroom, and parks and recreation storage in the basement. In order to change the house from a home into a public building, a change of use must be obtained. Structural inspection and enhancements must be done. ADA compliance must be met. Electrical enhancements may be necessary, and a fire alarm system is needed. Additionally, a security system, telephone service, internet service will be needed. Fencing to better define property boundaries and enhancement of the walkway to the river will be needed as well. Later tonight, a major upkeep of the property will be addressed by this body in the form of a Tourism Advisory Committee request. Routine maintenance is currently being handled by General Properties, but a future request to use a landscaping firm is being developed. It will first go to the TAC and then come back to the board. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee would like to have a representative on the museum working group going forward. There is also a need to supplement the volunteers by providing a part-time recreation monitor to assist with facility staffing. This position would cost $16,588 per year in salary. Tonight, we ask that the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator and county attorney to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association, the Dahlgren Heritage Foundation, and the King George County Historical Society for the operation of a museum at 3321 Roseland Road. We ask that the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator to work with John J. Berger, Architect PC, to develop planning documents for the site. And we ask that the Board of Supervisors authorize staff to develop a budget for the remainder of fiscal year 2021 and to include an additional budget account going forward. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
All right, I'll just go down the board. Mr. Stonehill, you have any questions?
No.
Ms. Kupka?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
Mr. Bush?
Only question under next steps, the last and final step, authorize staff to develop a budget for the remainder of 2021 and include an additional budget account going forward. Can you please elaborate on include an additional budget account going forward?
In Parks and Recreation, we have 4 accounts that we see. We have our administration account, our Citizen Center account, and the 2 Recreation Activity Fund accounts. It's our hope that we would operate this museum like we do the Citizen Center under its own account and its own line items, so that that way monies wouldn't cross hands and we would know exactly what went to the museum versus it's like the Citizen Center.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Granger?
Madam Chair, if I may, two issues with this recommendation. Number one, I don't think that we're there yet with establishing a budget account. I think that it'll be more prudent for us to get a good understanding of operational costs and bring a recommendation to the board for what a budget like that would look like. But we're not even at an operational phase right now. So I think that we'd be more comfortable recommending to the board just authorizing the funding, which you already have, to design the building. So that really alleviates the need for you all to make the second recommendation, because you all already approved us to enter into the agreement with John Berger Architect. So I think that going forward, the only thing that we really need to recommend tonight would be authorizing us to go ahead and negotiate the MOU with the museums, and then we'll continue to work on trying to get an understanding of what the operational budget will look like.
All right, thank you, Dr. Young. One question I would have for yourself and Mr. Britton was, since this is a tourism-related item, what can be paid out of the TAC account for landscaping, that part-time salary position? And that could be something that could be brought further in a further date to us, or future date, I meant to say.
Roger, man, I agree. That's something that we definitely need to hash out with the county attorney, and we could bring a budget proposal back to you all with a recommendation on how that budget would be funded.
Thank you, Dr. Young, Mr. Britton. And one other thing is, so what we approved tonight will also to make sure that there is a Parks and Rec committee member on the guest group for the MOU. So we make sure that we do that. All right, we need a motion for that, right?
So, Madam Chair, I move to authorize the county administrator and the county attorney to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association, Dahlgren Heritage Foundation, and the King George County Historical Society for the operation of a museum at 3321 Roseland Road.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Clark, and everyone that has been part of this journey, and hopefully the neighbors can be somewhat happy about it all, because I think it'll be a good thing for the county. Thank you very much. All right, next up is the TAC application for the Roslyn Road landscaping. Is Nick online?
Yes, yes, Madam Chair, sorry. Can
Okay.
everyone hear me?
Go right ahead, you're up.
All right. I'm here this evening to request funding against the Tourism Fund for the King George Parks and Recreation Roseland Road landscaping. The Roseland Road property was obtained by the county in December 2019. It has the potential to become a tourist attraction, either as an outreach of the county's museums or a meeting venue. There has been minimal upkeep done to the property other than bi-weekly lawn mowing by the general property staff. Application is requesting initial cleanup and then grounds maintenance by a professional lawn care company. Parks and Recreation received 2 quotes. One is for initial cleanup and the other with several different time frames for ongoing maintenance. Tax recommendation is that the board approves $5,915 for initial cleanup and recommend the county get quotes from local King George lawn care businesses before making final decision for annual upkeep. Staff agrees with the tax recommendations. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? I know one thing, being there many times, the Bucklers who formerly owned the house, I don't know if they were master gardeners, Ms. Kupka might know this, but they did extensive landscaping, and I never saw it in its original, but it looks like it was very pretty. And being a museum, it would look nice to keep that consistent and to make sure a promise many of us made to the residents that live on that road, that we would not let it go to disuse. And Mr. Bush?
So this request is for the initial cleanup to the tune of $5,000. Am I getting that correct? This is not a landscaping contract. This is for initial cleanup, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then would pursue a possible contract for the continued maintenance, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But my point being, $5,000 for a cleanup at a property that we went to, and that yard, I mean, I understand it might not be as pristine as it used to be, but $5,000 for something that I would normally do over a weekend, I can't justify $5,000 for an initial cleanup. Now, if this was landscaping, they were bringing in plants, there was something of that magnitude taking place, trellises or whatever, yeah, but to clean up the property?
Well, the line items in front of us, it's Old Town Lawn, who currently does our maintenance on the trees in the medians, is who we went to for our initial quotation. It includes removal of 2 small trees that are growing within larger established trees, trimming of all hedges, delivery of mulch, maintenance of all the gardens and flowers, excluding those that are within the white fence to the left side of the property, mulching the entire property, which is estimated to be 35 yards, pruning the trees, weeding the flower beds, and spreading said mulch. The employer says it would be 4 workers and a tractor and 3 8-hour days.
My other question is the gazebo or trellis, would they also be cleaning up that, because that is quite a bit overgrown?
Yes, the only portion of the property I did not ask them to quote was what was within the white fencing where the raised beds are, because we have thoughts of possibly using that for an instructional site and working with either master gardeners or 4-H.
Right. Mr. Bush?
I mean, when he says 4 employees at 3 8-hour days, I could see where it's adding up. And the delivery of mulch, providing that. So I'll remove my my concern. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Kupka?
Yeah, I shared your concerns, but I just did a little math on my calculator here, particularly the mulching labor cost. And if you take, granted, they're going to do everything, not just the mulching, but even if it's, 3 8-hour days, 4 guys, 32 man hours, and you divide that for 4 people's labor, it comes out at $78.90 for 4 people. So it's, $20 an hour, so yeah.
Mr. Stonehill?
Mr. Clark, nobody from the county wanted to take a shot at that?
Part of it is we don't have the expertise. The general properties staff made an attempt in the spring to work on it and try to start the upkeep. But between the general maintenance that they have, COVID response, that staff is extremely tasked and short man hours. When you have requests to get just simple maintenance things done, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days to get them just to you. Mike Muncy's staff is extremely hard pressed right now with hours.
I kind of meant local contractors, not county employees.
The recommendation was to go to the contractor we were already working with on a TAC project, and that's where we started. And that's where the TAC is throwing it back into my court as going forward for an annual maintenance agreement to take it to bid and see if we can attract possibly a King George business.
Yeah, I would certainly like to see one of our local businesses take a shot at it, to see what they can do.
Quick question. For this money, this would just be to clean it up at this moment, knowing that the fall is coming and it's going to go into a dormant. Could this possibly be pushed off until the spring so that we can bid it out? I'm just throwing it out there.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Kupka?
can I make a point? Because you did mention the Master Gardener bit, and I took the Master Gardener certification back in 2016, and I can tell you just from the plantings that I know are there, we really should do what we can to kind of clean them up right now. I feel like if we wait and we go through the winter and it could be a bad season for ice or heavy snowfall and not doing the preventive maintenance and the trimming of the things there now that we could take care of might cost more in the long run as far as replacing plantings or having to pay additional monies to have things removed that get damaged from, the winter.
Yeah, I was just putting it out there just in case, but Mr. Stonehill?
I was just going to piggyback on that. A lot of that stuff that was there needs to be cut all the way down for winter anyways and removed.
Right. So do we have a motion?
I move to approve $5,915 for initial cleanup and recommend the county get quotes from local King George. Sorry. Are we doing the, before I finish, are we doing the local quotes or are we just going with the?
I don't think with our purchasing policy that we can limit ourselves to King
Yes.
George County businesses. Ms. Cobb's obviously not here to tell us that, but I can add, with Old Town Lawn, they were competitively bid when they took over the maintenance of the trees. That was a competitive bid 2 years ago. And so we will take this project to a competitive bid process. We'll develop an RFP and put that out for the maintenance starting in 2021.
Okay, I apologize. Then I'm going to finish. I move to approve $5,915 for initial cleanup of the Roseland Road property as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Oh, and Mr. Minor, apologize when people aren't here.
Thank you, ma'am.
I really appreciate your help. Department of Economic Development and Tourism, Mr. Minor again, TAC application for Back Porch Vineyard.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. So this is for the Back Porch Vineyard for the King George 300th Anniversary Gala for October 17th, 2020. Back Porch Vineyard has been asked to host the 300th Anniversary Gala. They are requesting funding to cover glasses, t-shirts, and initial applications to the Chesapeake Bay Wine Trail. Glasses and T-shirts will advertise the Vineyard and the King George 300th anniversary. Chesapeake Bay Wine Trail membership will give the county and the Vineyard exposure outside the immediate area. Estimated cost for these three items is $3,117.00. TAC recommends that the board approves $3,400 for the shirts, glasses, and wine trail membership. Staff agrees with this recommendation. The reason why the TAC, just to sort of cover this before you guys ask questions, the reason why the TAC recommended more is because I believe the owners of Back Porch, there was a rounding error and that they were off by about 200 and some odd dollars. I think the exact amount to cover everything was around $3,320 is what I have written down here. I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
Do we have questions? I'll wait a second.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Kupka.
So, Mr. Minor, thank you for the time we spent talking today on the phone about this application. I did think of something that I did not ask you, however. There was an email from the Wine Trail stating that Back Porch Vineyard will also need to participate in trail meetings at least 10 months out of the year. So can I assume that Back Porch Vineyard is in fact willing to make that commitment if we're going to be funding their first year, their $1,200 to join the wine trail?
Yes, ma'am. I did not speak to him directly on that. I can definitely go back and get clarification, but I am pretty certain that that is going to be something they participate in.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I'd be looking forward to having a site on the Chesapeake, another site, because I know we have one at Whitehall, I would imagine, but to have another site on the wine trail would be great.
Do you have any other questions? Do we have a motion then?
I move to approve $3,400 for the shirts, glasses, and wine trail membership.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Minor.
Thank you.
Last up, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, TAC application, Friends of Caledon.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. Friends of Caledon and King George Outdoor Adventure Day is requesting funds against the tourism fund. King George County is an area steeped in history and rich scenic beauty with diversified outdoor activity venues of nature trails, wildlife preserves, rivers, and one of the few natural landmarks in Virginia, Caledon State Park. In keeping with the theme, Outdoor Adventures, this event provides safety and distancing, fresh open air exercise, and experiencing nature. The event offers outdoor recreational opportunity that includes Caledon State Park, the Algren Heritage Railroad Trail, and Lake Caledon. The Friends of Caledon are looking for sponsors and partners with the goal that a successful first-time event will draw returning customers and tourists. Original request is for $3,000 for advertising, promos, brochures, yard signs, porta-johns, water and snacks, musicians. The Friends of Caledon are requesting donations of $20 per person from participants. Advertisement for the event includes local publication, Instagram and Facebook, and manage event tickets with Eventbrite. The TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve $6,100 for promo materials on the condition of advertising outside the county. Staff agrees with the TAC recommendations. And just as a quick note, what we did recommend was that if they were going to do any Instagram or Facebook marketing, that marketing be targeted outside of the county, in the Fredericksburg region and beyond, essentially Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland, and Richmond.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe when I went through this, Mr. Minor, I saw social media person advertise event on Instagram and Facebook, set up and manage Eventbrite for online ticket sales, 8 weeks of work for the event, $1,290. Is part of, would that be funded in what the dollar amount we're approving tonight? Because I sort of have an issue with giving them grant funds to pay a person to do their social media for them. I don't mind paying for the advertising on Facebook and Instagram, like to boost a post. I understand how to do that and the value of that, but I don't think we should be giving them grant money to use to pay a person to do their social media. Because for me, there's an element of volunteerism involved in this. These are the friends group, and I kind of feel like maybe somebody should be willing to help do that aspect of it as a voluntary effort.
No, ma'am, that was not included. The TAC also noted that and only recommended for the marketing materials and essentially did it on the condition of that they would, if they did do Instagram or Facebook marketing, that they did do it outside of the county. I communicated that with the applicant and she was fine with that.
Very good, thank you.
All right.
Do we have any other questions?
Mr. Minor, when, are there any dates in mind? I mean, when is this going to be next week? Is it going to be next year? What kind of, I didn't see any dates or anything on here.
Yes, sir. So when I spoke to the applicant, she gave me the date November 7th is when they're looking at completing this event or executing this event.
So they're going to get this money and they've got 30 days to get this thing planned and advertised and up?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
What was that, Mr. Minor?
Yes, ma'am. That was my understanding.
Mr. Stonehill, I understand your concern there because that's a little bit of chunk of money. It's for what, maybe even less than a month's advertising.
I mean, if this was something that they were planning for next fall, it would be very good. But I mean, something of this magnitude, at least reading through it, seems like this is a year out kind of project, not 30 days out.
Even maybe for the spring, but not.
So when I did speak to the event coordinator, what she did communicate to me was that the event was scaled down a bit, given the timeline. Instead of having 5 stations, they were going to have 3. 2 of those stations was going to be located in Caledon. The other was going to be located on the Dalvin Heritage Railroad Trail. So it's not as large as she originally planned for. So there is that, just a bit of information that that the board should be aware of before you make your decision.
Madam Chair, may I? Mr. Minor, you and I again talked today about my question about the date that Mr. Stonehill just brought up. One of the advertising items detailed here was an ad in the local magazine that I think I just received mine in the mail last Friday. Was there actually an ad in that? I mean, did an ad actually run for this event or not? Because again, as my colleagues have mentioned, it's a pretty compressed time frame, and that isn't going to be published again until next month, I would guess. So.
Not to my knowledge, and I believe that was a part of the request to have the county pay for that local ad. And I did communicate to the applicant that that's if it's within the locality, if it's within King George County, it's not something that we typically fund. It would need to go outside of the county, and the goal, as always, is to bring in more people to the county and have people stay in our hotels and come visit and shop and eat within the county. So it's not necessarily for the residents. I think we all sort of understand that the residents knows what's in the county and what's available to them. It's getting the word out regionally or or even statewide in some cases.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm getting the feeling that this is kind of something, because normally don't they do the Caledon Art and Wine Festival the first weekend in November? And I'm guessing this is something they're doing in lieu of that this year, given the circumstances?
Yes, ma'am. So this is supposed to be the replacement for that event, or the attempt to replace that event this year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you have any other questions? How do my colleagues feel? Do we want to approve the $6,100 or maybe reduce that amount, or what are you feeling? Mr. Bush?
So initially, I was looking at this application, which is dated as submitted on August 28th of 2020. But Ms. Kupka brought up a valid point in that this is a replacement for the Art and Wine Festival. Usually the Friends of Caledon are way ahead of schedule. They're on their game when it comes to that wine and art festival. This has been a unique year with a lot of challenges. And, you know, at some point, you try to wait out the clock to see if things are going to open up, just like we had to do with our 300th anniversary events. So while normally I would critique the hell out of this, and the fact that advertising, we're within 30 days, basically. But if this is something that can get people out and gives people something to do, I fully support it. So I don't have any concerns with this. Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion? All right, do we have a motion?
I move to approve $6,100 for promo materials with condition of advertising outside the county, approved at the TAC meeting of September 23rd, 2020.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Minor, and thank you to the TAC.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Dr. Young, next up, declaration of local emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On September 15, 2020, the Board of Supervisors reaffirmed the declaration of emergency regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. The declaration was confirmed with the expiration date of October 20th, 2020. In addition, the board directed the county attorney and county administrator to craft a new resolution amending the language and extending the expiration date through December 31st, 2020. I recommend the Board of Supervisors approve the resolution as presented.
Do we have a motion? Any discussion before we do our motion? Mr. Bush?
So I would like to thank my colleagues for their consideration of my concerns the last time we adopted this. I would like to thank the county attorney, Mr. Britton, and the county administrator for working with me. This actually takes care of what my concerns were. This addresses that this is a financial tool. This tells the citizens of King George why we're doing this and that it's applicable to the CARES Act funding so that we can utilize those funds to serve our citizens. So I really appreciate that. We've always talked about how this is a financial tool, but the declaration never clarified that. It never let you really know what this is. And I am very happy with what has been crafted here. So thank you again to everybody for your patience with me. And thank you to the language being incorporated. I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
I just have one question, which I just reread it again right now, and I caught this. Is it supposed to be March 27th through December 30th or 31st? I just want to make sure it's supposed to be December 30th. Okay. Okay, I was just double checking. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure since I was reading it right here again. All right, do we have a motion?
I move to accept the declaration of emergency as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you very much for you guys' work. Dr. Young, County Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to let the board know that, well, you all are fully aware of the growth and the escalating business of the county is being felt amongst the staff and across the administration, whether it be in the Community Development Department or it be in the Economic Development Department. But particularly, we are starting to notice, or I actually was contacted by the Commissioner of Revenue, and she basically shot a red flare. Basically, the office is being overrun with more work than they have employees or staffing to meet the needs of the department. And speaking with Judy, she gave me some examples of some of the increased workload that's been experienced by her staff, which includes the veteran program, which is increased to 142, up from 100 last year. They've been seeing increases in work with assessing more vehicles coming into the county, assisting with state income tax, state estimated tax, and even processing over 1,430 business licenses that are due by March 1st. So this increased workload, and as the board is fully aware, is not going to get any slower, is forcing her staff to work after hours and often dedicating times on the weekend just to meet the demands of the office. And speaking with Judy, she and I had a discussion on what it would take in order for her staffing to be made whole and appropriate to meet the demands of the office. And what she requested was permission to convert the part-time position of office assistant to full-time office assistant, to create a position for assistant real estate tech, a desk and a chair, a computer monitor, and printer. And after adding up all those totals, it came to a grand total of slightly less than $40,000. After reviewing our fund balances and having discussions with our auditors, I'm very comfortable with us being able to absorb that those costs. So if the board is so moved, I would like to recommend that the board authorize the county administrator to create a full-time position for office assistant in the at the cost of $7,517 plus benefits. Real estate tech full-time, which is $27,456 plus benefits. To purchase a desk and chair for $1,000 and order a computer monitor and printer for a total of $1,385. This will bring the grand total for the request for $37,358.80 that will be transferred from the general fund balance to the to the general fund and appropriated to the Commissioner of Revenue's office to meet the staffing needs and furniture needs of the department.
My colleagues have any questions? Mr. Granger?
Yes, ma'am. So, Ms. Hart, thank you for pulling this information together, and Dr. Young, thank you for presenting it. I just had a question. The plus benefits, what do we have an idea of the, because I know that 37,358 didn't, I don't believe it included the plus benefits. And so do we understand what that cost of benefits could be? Because I know it could depend on if, if someone takes health insurance or if they don't, VRS. So I'm just trying to understand the total cost impact to the budget in order to support this request.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad you brought that up. And my apologies, because this discussion was basically had outside of after the board books had already been completed, and all of our discussions and preparation for the board meetings had been completed. So I know that is a little out of our norm. However, those benefits would come to an approximate total of 2,480 plus an additional 33,640. So all in, no, I'm sorry. The total, sir, would come in at about an additional $11,500. So that would bring the total request to cover the request $48,858. So slightly less than $50,000. I apologize.
Okay, you said 48,850, was that the number?
Yes, sir. $48,858.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
So I would amend my recommendation. I'd recommend that the board authorize the county administration to transfer $48,858 from the general fund balance to the general fund and appropriate those monies to the commissioner revenue budget.
I know, Ms. Hart, you had reached out to me, and I understand the need. Your staff works very hard, and you work very hard for the county, and you do have a lot more business in your department, and I understand the need to not tax our employees for the heavy workload, and that's really important to make sure that our employees in your office, which is an uptick, are taken care of. Does anyone have any other questions, concerns? Mr. Bush?
Thank you. So I too spoke with Ms. Hart. She called me, and we had a great conversation over this. So there are many departments in King George County that need more staffing. This is the one that made it to us. But we have departments that are working that have the same staffing levels that we had when the population of King George was 17,000. We need to, this next budget cycle is going to be hard, but eventually we need to get to the point to where we start looking at county staff positions, and it's going to come at a price, but we have to fill these positions. We have some people doing the work of 3 or 4 individuals. I'm glad that this one made it to us and we're able to address this one. Hopefully in the next budget cycle, we'll be able to address more, but this is something that really needs to take place. So thank you for bringing it to this level and us being able to approve it. Thank you.
Piggybacking on that, Mr. Bush, I've said that for a while, that a lot of our staff needs to have staffing levels brought up to our higher population level, and our anticipated population level with that probably comes from the nice bridge project being completed, but it does come at a cost. So that is the problem. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve transfer from the fund balance to the general fund in total of $48,850 for the purposes of the Commissioner of the Revenues positions as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hart, for bringing it to our attention. Appreciate you and your staff. You're welcome. Dr. Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I apologize for that action item coming outside of our normal streamlined process. But given the emergent nature of the request, I felt that it was best that we do bring it to the board for consideration tonight so we can go ahead and address those staffing needs. With that being said, I received correspondence from the Virginia Association of Counties, or VACO. VACO would like to advise the board of the upcoming business meeting on Tuesday, November 11th, 2020 at 10 a.m. This meeting will be hosted virtually. In addition to notifying the board about the upcoming meeting, as you all know, they utilize, they request that localities provide 2 representatives from the locality to serve as voting members on the at the business meeting. So I would like to request that the board recommend a primary representative to serve as a voting member at the VACO business meeting and an alternate representative to serve as a voting member at the VACO business meeting.
Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
So didn't we appoint a liaison prior to this meeting? Or I'm sorry, when we stood up what committees we were going to serve, and I believe the chair was the liaison and the vice chair was the alternate. Is that correct?
Yes, that should have been.
So I would say the 2 liaisons, the primary and the alternate, be the ones to participate.
One clarification on that. The VACO meeting this year is virtual, and it's just to make sure this is for the VACO meeting, which I think has a $50 fee virtual.
Vote.
Right, but I think it's part of that whole,
That's correct, Madam Chair.
all right. Do I have a motion on that? Do we need a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
We do need a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move to appoint the chair, Ms. Binder, as the primary and the vice chair, Ms. Kupka, as the alternate for the VACO annual meeting on November 11th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Dr. Young, can you have your staff take care of the registration for us? Like
Yes,
you
Madam
always.
Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Young?
On September 24th, 2020, the Board of Supervisors hosted CARES Act Spend Plan Work Session Number 4. During the meeting, the board approved the semifinal plan attached to this report. In addition, the board tabled the discussion on both the Parks and Recreation virtual learner request for $50,000 to deliberate on its desire to extend the program. In addition, the board tabled the King George Fire Rescue purchase request for an ambulance in the amount of $250,000 to deliberate on the topic and afford the county attorney the time needed to determine if the purchase is legal. I would like to ask for the board for its guidance on these two decision points.
Mr. Bush?
So we got two items here that were tabled that we're revisiting. So I would like to recommend that we do one item at a time for discussion. So the first being the ambulance, I would like to recommend that the board take the $250,000 that we were holding aside for the ambulance and move it to public safety salaries.
I would agree with that.
I would agree as well.
All right.
And then as far as the learning, I don't have it in front of me.
The virtual
The
learning request.
virtual learning, I recommend on not continuing that program. And I base that personally on eventually, we're probably going to have a lot of applicants because a lot of people need it. But like it was said earlier, it's only going to be able to serve 25 or so people. And for that type of money, the return on investment, I think it needs to go to best serve the majority of King George County instead of 25 people that win that
Lottery.
that distinguished honor to be able to participate in that program.
Ms. Kupka and then Mr.
Madam
Parker.
Chair, Madam Chair, if I may.
Dr. Young?
And just I just need just for that so that the board has all the information available at hand. I have received the update from Chris Clark since his request at the work session. He went and took another look at the virtual program and the potential capacity that his department would be able to meet in order to accommodate the program. And he wrote me the following correspondence. He said, "Good morning. And looking at the virtual learning numbers again, I believe that a more reasonable figure of 20 kids and $25,000 for the remainder of the 2020 calendar year versus the request at the work session of 25 kids and 50,000 kids." So the request has changed.
Mr. Clark is here, so I'll have him address that.
Yes, ma'am. We continue to look back through the numbers and looking at what we've actually spent to date based on the original $52,000 allocation. We had some staff turnover, and so our staffing costs went down from the original projection. In addition, the comfort level of the room and the spacing, 20 is what really fits in that room well. So we'd like to cut the number down. And actually, as I continue to crunch numbers, as I've sat here for the last couple hours, we can do the next 10 weeks for $20,000 and be able to meet the staffing costs, and any additional costs for the additional aspects will be able to come out of the monies that we already have allocated. So we will still be able to process the program at $20,000 to service 20 children, if the board is so willing.
Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Young. I saw Mr. Clark was here and was going to ask him if it would in fact still cost up to $50,000. So I do have some comfort in knowing that it is going to be half that. I understand where my colleague is coming from with regards to not fulfilling it But I actually would like to continue it. I would be in favor of granting the request because this is something that we are providing our county employees that have come to work and have except for, I don't know, what was it, a couple weeks or so? No, they did come to work for the most part, and the county offices, they were working even though they weren't open to the public for a certain period of time at the beginning of this. Our county staff has had to make the county go and keep the county running, and if this is something that we can do for them to lighten the burden on them, then I would be in favor of it.
Thank you. Mr. Granger.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just going to ask, make sure I'm not missing something. The schools are still planning for K through 2 to be, is it November 2nd?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what kind of impact that might have to your program?
I know for a fact we have 3 first graders in the program. I have not surveyed those parents as of yet.
Okay.
I can tell you all on behalf of the employees that we have, one of which is in Mrs. Hart's department, that is one of those folks that is definitely overworked, and because she's the only one who can do her job the way she's described it to me. So she is working a lot of hours. We have members of the community development staff's children. We have a service authority child. We have one from the administration, one from the treasurer's office. These folks that are in departments that are at their limits, the fact that they can be at work, I am told thank you so many times a day. And I sit in my office and continue to do parks and recreation work. I'm not in there. It's, part-time folks that are really leading this program for us and have really taken the bull by the horns and taken over and really understand this Canvas and these learning platforms and are helping these kids. And I know for these parents that when they go home at night, if their kids are done with school, it is such a relief for them. And so it's been very, very, very beneficial for our county staff.
Okay.
Go ahead. Mr. Stonehill, do you have a comment before I go back to Mr. Bush? Mr. Bush.
Thank you. So I want to be very careful that I'm not talking out of my swim lane. My understanding is currently the school board is working on moving to school for K through 2 for November 2nd, I believe is the date. But they are still maintaining the full virtual option. My understanding is you can go to in-person if your family chooses to, and then if your family chooses to remain virtual, you would remain virtual. With that being said, that might have some impacts. But it sounds like this conversation is kind of revolving around the assumption that this would serve county employees. But when this was initially presented, wasn't that this would be open to the public and that it would be like a lottery? So you don't get preference if you are a county employee. This is open to everybody, correct?
The initial goal, the initial request that I made to the county administrator was to start with the employees that we already have. His advice was that we would be open what was left to open it to the general public. With the children that we already have in the program, I would like to be able to continue to serve them. If we have those which we have a few that are hit and miss. Some days they come, some days they don't. If mom is a part-time employee or dad is a part-time employee and they have that ability, or they have grandma that can come over some days a week, I want to get those folks that are off the fence and let us know that we can accommodate as many children, 20 children a day, 5 days a week would be our goal. So you can come in some days and there are 12 kids in the room, and other days there are 19 or 20. So that would be our goal, so that we get those folks to be established that yes, I will be there 5 days a week. And then if they're not, see if they can find another option so that we can put a child in that needs to be there 5 days a week.
So to sum up, we're looking at max capacity of 20 kids when everybody in this county is going through the same thing.
Absolutely,
and we'd
sir.
be obligating $20,000. So yeah, I applaud the effort and everything that y'all are doing. And I'm sure you're making 25 families very happy, but I can't obligate $20,000 to provide services for 20 lottery winners, basically. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? Brian? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of have the same things. I've heard from quite a few constituents upset that we are not providing daycare for everyone in the county and we're only providing it for a small segment. And they were pretty blunt to me about that. They don't think it's equitable and fair that only a small segment is getting. And it's a possibility the school board is going to come back again and ask for more virtual CARES Act money. And I just see this as a precedent that I don't know if I could support this. And I know our county employees are doing a great job and there's a lot going on, but unless we're going to do it for everybody, that's a problem for me. But that's me. Go ahead, Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would only counter to that by saying that we have a responsibility to provide for the health, safety, and welfare for our community. And we can only do that if our staff is able to do that for us. And this program allows them to come into work so that they don't have to take that coronavirus up to, I think it's like 12 weeks of paid leave, but you only get paid like 2/3 of your salary during that time because you have a need to provide childcare. So there is that option, but then if we have a bunch of staff that have to take advantage of this because they have no other option, then they take that option and then we put Dr. Young in the position of having to backfill positions because now we have county employees that aren't going to be coming to work for 12 weeks because they have to stay home and take care of their kids.
I understand that, but there are other options that are possible, like telework or maybe adjusting our hours so people could come in later to accommodate being home for virtual learning. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just seeing it that way that, there are other options for our county employees. And I've said this from the beginning to Dr. Young about being flexible and allowing some of our employees to work later as a possibility if they have to be home for childcare. And I know this is a very sticky issue and I don't know what the easy answer is, but we have to make a decision and a vote.
May I recommend that we make a vote on the two items separately?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start with one at least. I move to decline the King George Fire and Rescue purchase of an ambulance of $250,000 and allocate those funds to the public safety salaries.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Clark, what was the fund cost? Was it 20,000?
20,000 even is what we're looking at right now.
Right. And one clarification on that would just be for county employees, correct?
They would be the first ones I would offer to those that are already in the program, and then we would fill the rest of the spots.
But it would only be 20 positions.
20 total spots is what we can comfortably fit in that room and maintain proper social distancing.
And that would be to the end of the calendar year, correct?
Correct. That is the feel that it seems based off of the school board meeting from last night. I know they were having another work session next week, but that it doesn't look like the full blended model is coming in anytime soon. So we want to be able to assist our county employees. If for some reason that changes, we would adapt. In addition, if this is not approved tonight, we would, as Parks and Rec, turn it into a program and be asking folks to, if they wanted to be part to pay. It's been very successful for us so far to have these children in and be able to serve them. So not knowing I don't know where each employee would be able to stand with paying, but we will come up with a equitable rate to make it so that we can offer it as a program. Because at this point, going back with Play It Smart, even with K through 2 back, that is not economically viable for us. That Play It Smart is a program where we have to cover a cost, and with the numbers that we know will come back to Play It Smart at that point with just K through 2 in the schools, we won't be able to make ends meet and meet our staffing costs.
One other question concerning that, since how many, and you might have already said this, but how many of those that we currently have enrolled are K through 2?
I know of 3 that are first graders. I don't know them all off the top of my head. Now that Ms. Shelton's on working with recreation programs, she's taken over that whole program for me. And they only call me pretty much when the internet goes down entirely because I'm the one who goes and resets the modem.
So even if those children go back to school, they'd only be in for half a day for the days they're in, and then they would be virtual the other 3 days that are not in person. No, I'm sorry, it's 4 days, isn't it? I apologize, I missed it, but half a day for 4 days, and then Wednesday's the asynchronous day for everyone. That's
Correct. And so our plan on that though is that we want to fill 100 seat days. So if those 3 first graders were to choose to go in person, more than likely their spots would disappear for that Wednesday. So then that employee would probably need to be taking leave or of some sort to cover that day.
Yeah, why I asked the question was, and you bring up a good point, because they could choose to be virtual. If those 3 positions were vacated, that we could then put them out to the general public to.
Correct.
To
Yeah,
fill.
if we had a larger facility, I would be happy to take 100 children. But at this point, we are not in the schools. The YMCA is there, and I don't know what their future plans are.
And how many, maybe you said it, I missed it. How many you got in there right now?
It varies based on day. There are 19 or 20 officially signed up, but some day, like a lot of, it seems like it's mostly on Wednesdays. We end up with less, I think, because it's asynchronous. Some of the parents are trying to knowing that there's not these scheduled Google Meet times that are a little easier for us to get the kids on, that they want to make sure that their children are knocking out all of the assignments they have.
And are they all county employees, or do you have them mixed in there?
They are county employees or service authority employees. So yeah, and social services.
One other clarification, for those students that are there half day, they would then be by bus brought to you for the other part of the day when they're in school, or would they go home? Or you don't know that?
That we haven't addressed. I mean, as I said before, my goal is to have the students be with us all 5 days a week. So if there's somebody who's going in person and they're there half days, the only bus that would come to our location would be King George Elementary. But if I can fill that spot and be able to help somebody full day, I think that would be our better bet.
Okay.
I know this would be a lot of logistics. Is it possible to like puzzle piece something together? So you have like this kid's in the morning and this kid's in the afternoon. Wednesday would be obviously the issue because they would all need it that day. But I'm just kind of wondering, is there ways to?
When we were talking blended, that was one of the first avenues I came. I had a 5-day price, a 3-day price, and a 1-day price, and trying to figure out how we would best fill every seat every day. At this point, blended is not an option, so we don't have those Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday kids to worry about yet. But I was ready to play the card game and stack the decks and figure out which day we had 21, and this day we had 19, and okay, this day we only have 15, so we can add 2 more kids, and maybe on Wednesdays have to expand the tables and use both sides of the hall, because right now we're only using one side. We leave the other side open for when they have breaks to be able to go over and do something physical so that they're not in the same space with 18 other students trying to learn, because a lot of the kids now have learned, especially on Wednesdays, is as their cohorts start to finish, they start looking around going, oh, that guy's done and that kid's done. Oh, I'll click submit now. And our staff's learned to go back and check because they're clicking submit when they have 3 of the 10 questions done because they want to go play. So the staff's doing a real good job at making sure the children are completing their assignments before they try to get to the recreation part of the day.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion whether it's seconded or not, or it fails. I
Go
don't
ahead.
mind. I move to allocate $20,000 in CARES Act funding to the virtual learning request.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion that's been forwarded and properly seconded. We'll move now to the discussion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 And any nays?
Nay.
Chair votes nay. Motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for all the work you've done.
Ms. Bender?
Yeah. Did you say nay?
I just,
I'm sorry.
I had a question I want to ask, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So there's still $30,000 from that line item. So I
yeah.
guess my question is to Dr. Young, do we want to leave that in contingency? Or which would put contingency, I believe, at about $80,000, or would it be preferable to move that dollars over to the fire and EMS or safety salaries?
I would just, you beat me to the punch, sir. I think I'd recommend that we move that to contingency for any upcoming priorities in between now and December 30th.
Okay.
And I can update the spend plan accordingly.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
To leave it in contingency?
Oh, it's still in the contingency? Okay.
Correct.
So we'll just move it into contingency then? Yeah.
Yeah, maintain. You're correct. Maintain it in contingency.
Okay. This can be very confusing, following all the parts here. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the last part, Dr. Young.
Yes, Madam Chair. And it's not the George Washington Regional Commission. It's the FAMPO, Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. Is in need of a staff appointment to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, or BPAC. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Supervisors appoint Chris Clark to the FAMPO BPAC for a term of 2 years.
Chris, you didn't do enough?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Oh, the ghost of the bad meetings coming back. Mr. Clark, thank you for all you do, because you have been appointed to many committees. And Dr. Young?
And Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Young. I have to mention one thing. Mr. Clark, I do know this information comes from today because my son signed up to be a census enumerator. And through your efforts and everyone in the George Washington Regional Commission region, they're at 95% from what I was told today. So thank you for all your efforts and all you've done. Mr. Granger.
I apologize. This is off topic. I just wanted to go back because I want to make sure it got done right and I didn't mess something up. Mr. Britton, are you still on the line?
Yes.
Awesome. So when Mr. Lau was here for talking about the bonds, I just made a motion to adopt the documents. I know there's a resolution. Do I need to explicitly say it was for the resolution for the bonds? And if so, do we need to do like a roll call vote or anything? I know this is kind of a big one. I just don't want to leave tonight and then be like, well, we didn't do the checks to say the board's on board with this.
It is a roll call vote. I believe it was unanimous, and
Yes.
I added a roll call to the bottom of the resolution. As I recall, you said the documents as presented.
Yes.
And that was the only document, Neiman can correct me if I'm wrong, that's the only document presented tonight. And in that document, it authorizes county staff, namely the chair and Neiman, to execute the lease of indenture and all that, financing lease and all that. And I went over it, but I think that was the only document presented tonight. Is that right, Neiman?
That's correct. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
But
I appreciate it.
I think you're okay, but but you do bring up a good point. It is a roll call vote, and I don't recall that we did that.
Would it be best if we went back and actually?
I think you're right, because I did add that myself out of the same concern you have, Mr. Granger. So if you could move to adopt the resolution regarding the bond financing and refinancing as presented, and then if the chair could do a roll call.
Oh, okay. I move to adopt the resolution about financing and refinancing as presented by roll call.
All right.
Someone needs a second.
Need a
Second.
Any further discussion? I'll now perform the vote by roll call. Mr. Stonehill.
Aye.
Ms. Kupka.
Aye.
Mr. Bush.
Aye.
Mr. Granger.
Aye.
Chair Kathy Bender votes aye. Motion carries. Unanimous.
Thank you for pointing that out.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Britton, for clarifying, and Mr. Granger for bringing it up. Now we have a motion for adjournment. Oh, you got another one?
No, he's coming.
Oh, okay. He is the official motion. Dr. Young, do we have any meetings between now and the 20th, just for clarification?
We don't need to adjourn to the gala or anything like that, do we?
No, sir, since that's not a public meeting per se.
That would be the other question. Are we journeying to the King George High School auditorium? I think that would be for the best until, I know there were some concerns about making sure that we have the space in the Rivercombe for voting.
Yes.
I think that's a valid concern, and I would propose that. Is everyone else on board with that? Okay. I move to adjourn until October 20th at 6:30 PM in the King George High School auditorium.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nay? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much to the public viewing. Good night.
You're welcome.